Good morning. Continuing our journey in Hemshech Samach Vav, we are on the fourth discourse, the fourth mimer, closer to the bottom of page Lamed Zayin, 37, speaking about tshuva as something that touches. He defines tshuva, true tshuva, from umka deliber, from the depths of the heart, shakes up and touches and shakes up the very core of a person. Because the conventional or standard, you can say, common human experience, so you are using your faculties, your mind, your emotions, your other faculties, speech, action, thought, in a regulated way. But tshuva is coming because there's a problem. Either the problem is that there are sins and transgressions and traumas and toxins, spiritual toxins that you want to eliminate. So then you have to go for what we call it deeper, like you'll call it open heart surgery. You need to go deeper into the system to get it cleansed. And for that, you need the remorse and the distress he's been discussing. Or even if someone doesn't have sins, but they want to get closer to godliness, living in this world, there's the distress of feeling a certain inadequacy. And all of that causes it touching like he says, etzem nefesh meir bigili. So when it comes Aveda b'meich v'lev, then you have the koiches gluyim, the revealed faculties, and there you're using them, and that's powerful work, contemplating and stimulating and awakening feelings, love and reverence for the divine. But the koiches gluyim levad. Tshuva mis'er etzem nefesh b'nizus b'mkeme. Tshuva reaches the core, and it shakes up, and it moves you out of your conventional, regular lifestyle. And he said, but this comes both from the meitzah, the distress of sins and transgressions, which are basically a disalignment, a sense of lack of spiritual health, where a person is not aligned with their purpose, with their soul, and with the divine. Yeah. And especially during the 10 days of tshuva, as he explained, kiruv hamoyer el anitzutz, then there's a special opportunity because the source, basically the source of the souls, the source of all the sparks of the souls, are closer to the sparks. So there's a natural inclination, a natural longing that the soul has during that time, and it feels that distance. So then we explained that there are two aspects to this. There's one aspect, almost like two stages. One is the feeling of distress. That is the thing, the catalyst that gets a person moving because they feel desperate, they feel in pain and in a place where they want to resolve the issue. So we could call meridus, a pain compared to physical pain. We talked yesterday more at length about the first step in all healing is sensing there's a problem and being motivated to do something about that problem. So that's step one, the hazaza meridus atzuma. But then he says, "B'meili yesh b'zeh hamshacha," and that very distress causes one to have a longing, a thirst, like we discussed. When you're thirsty, then you go look for water. But the predominant feeling at the time, however, he says, is he doesn't feel so much the longing as much as feeling the pain and distress of the distance. So even though he says, even though in the distress lies also the element, because that's what gets a person going to want to connect, and the longing to connect to the divine, to heal. Because what you feel then is more the distance. Like we talked about right now, initially you feel the distress, you feel the pain, the grief, the different ways I explained it in yesterday's class. And he's in this state of running from evil. Mamokem amise, he called it, from a place of death, running to a place of life. That is right now the predominant feeling. Aval ikar is gabrus, so he's running to a place of life, but what is the dominant is not running to the life, place of life, it's to escape from the toxins, from the unhealthy life. Ikar is gabrus b'zehu abricha. And that's where we stopped. The predominant, predominant experience is the running from the negative. Even though, like he says, it contains within it also the next stage, but that is not right now most apparent and conscious. And I was going to continue a discussion of this, the V'oidzes, where we stopped, talking now 7 lines from the bottom of page 37, and I'll continue reading now. And you can see if you want to follow the text and you don't have the sefer, the book, go to samachvav.com. There, all these pages have been scanned, the PDFs that you can easily download or view on your phone or print out, however you see fit. Okay. I will say this class will be a little shorter because I have to leave, so I'm going to probably be 10 or 15 minutes shorter. I'll probably finish around 10:15, our time here. So let's continue here. And furthermore, in continuing to analyze and dissect the anatomy of the process of tshuva, which I broadened and defined as generally, I explained it in the broader sense of healing in general, going from one place that is not desirable to a better place, and that could be either coming from a really dark place, like actual sins and transgressions that are a misalignment. And I compare it very much to a medical example, because lack of health is essentially a misalignment. If there's some obstacle or there's, God forbid, disease or illness, it's misaligning. It's not allowing the flow, whether it's affecting the circulation or the nervous system or the muscles or whatever it is in the human body. There's something wrong, and you feel pain. There's some symptoms from it, and those symptoms cause you to go to try to find a healing, to realign the misalignment. In the mitzvahs and avedas, the same idea. Mitzvah comes from the word connection. Just adding a little more explanation. Aveda comes from the word disconnection. Mitzvah means tafsa v'chibur, to bind yourself, to connect. So it's aligned. Aligned with what? Aligned with your soul, aligned with your purpose, aligned with a divine plan for you. When Adam and Chava ate from the tree of knowledge, they misaligned themselves, because God said, this is the purpose, this is your life. So transgression is like wandering off the reservation, not following the life instruction manual. And there are going to be consequences of that. Aveira comes from the word havara mirshus l'reshus, a misalignment, a displacement, like golus. Golus is not just physical displacement, being exiled from your land, it's also a spiritual displacement. That's why even in Israel, they say, Mipnei chateinu golinu martzenu, in Musaf and Yom Tov, that due to our sins, golinu, we were exiled from our land. But they're living in the land, they're there. Because you could be there and still be displaced spiritually. And as such, an Aveda is like the exact antithesis of a mitzvah. So in a zachet, there's a misalignment that causes the distress, which is now the predominant feeling. And from there, yes, that will lead to running toward a place of health and life, like he put it. So now he continues in dissecting and discussing this anatomy of this process. So he says, and furthermore, who sham shachid, that see, which is stage 2, the second step, the longing. Again, he keeps on saying that see, because amshachid can be defined as a transmission from the top down. Here he wants to call it more of a see, a yearning, a longing of a soul to reach a higher place. So he says, the hamshachid alakus, the yearning, the longing for godliness, who kimiyuish benafshe, is like, it's the feeling is one of resignation in his nefesh. Meaning he feels miyuish, he feels in a sense like he's in a state of lack. I don't want to use the word hopeless, because he doesn't mean it here in a negative sense. He means to say that even the hamshache, even the running toward, let's say someone's running from a burning building, or someone's running from a place of distress or trauma, and they're looking for healing. So even when they're running to the doctor, so to speak, or they're running for any healing, or they're running to a place, a safe place, from a dangerous place, the predominant feeling is not just they're running from the dangerous place, that even they're running to the safe place is also primarily, like he says, kimiyush benafshe. They're not running there because they just woke up one day and said, hey, I need to be in a healthy place. It's being driven because they see now that they're not in a good place. They're in a dangerous place. The
Is it
same
desperate?
thing, the distress of the neshama, the distress of the soul here is the driving force. So he's saying, is that even the second stage, which is going toward the positive, to the healing, is kimiyush benafshe, as he's going to explain. The oz, hamshachi betekif yeser. And because of that, the hamshacha, the yearning, the longing, is more intense. Like we discussed yesterday more at length. If a person doesn't feel they're in a dangerous situation or they're distressed, they're in a place that, let's say even they feel they're not great, they're not perfectly comfortable. But like I pointed out, the idea of a path of least resistance. But you can manage. You can manage. You're not really driven. You're not desperate, or whatever the word you want to use. So in a situation like that, will a person leave that? They may not. Even if they do, it won't be running for their lives. However, when it's coming from real distress and you really feel the distance from godliness, like he's describing it here, so that is the driving force, even in the tzii, even in the longing, the driving force is the wanting to get out of the dangerous place or the unhealthy place. That's what he's adding here. So in addition to what he said earlier, I mean, it's really breaking down into a lot of detail. In addition to what he said earlier, that though there's both elements, the running from the unhealthy to the running to the healthy, and the predominant power force here is that work is running from the negative, he's saying even running to the positive is also, in this situation, more of a miyuish state, which is like a desperate state, a state of like literally feeling really, I have to get out of here, as opposed to just purely seeing the light. We'll soon talk about that. You could also, someone can have a divine experience that's so powerful, and that causes them to want to be absorbed into that experience. But here, it's not coming from that. Remember, this is all tshuva. So tshuva is coming from a sense of lack. Something's missing, whether it's through direct sins, or it's coming from a place where you feel not as close to God as you want to be, like let's say at tzaddik. But regardless, it's all coming from a lack, not from a revelation. But he's going to talk about this shortly. So now that's what he added here. However, to really, again, dissect it properly, break it down, there are really two things in this. There are two elements here at work. The lepomim hayush hu mitzad hergesh ha'er. Sometimes this yush usually means resigned or giving up. You're giving up, you like surrender. Here, I'd say it's a combination of that plus desperation, plus probably a few other English words that I have to find. As we go
Disheartening,
along, I'll try to find the right words. But I'm not looking now for semantic words. I'm looking for the main thing is to convey the spirit of what he's saying, and then we'll find the right words. What he's trying to say here is like this. So sometimes the yush, this type of like the stress that is causing him to feel down or feel a lack. You know, yush is when a person gives up. In halacha, there's when a person loses, let's say, an object. So there's a yush medas, yush shalei medas. They give up looking for it, which has halachic implications. That's the place where it's used in halacha. Here, yush is being used much more emotionally and psychologically, that he's in a place where he recognizes that he's not the place he wants to be. And it creates it's a motivation to get out of this situation. So the yush here is not that he gives up hope to grow, but that he has given up hope of staying where he is. He knows that this is not the place to be. That's really what he means here. So, like I said, it's a combination of a few words. Desperate is a good word. Desperate, however, has some implications that are not exactly the meaning here. That's why I'm qualifying it. But there are probably a few other words that can be used here. Somebody wanted to suggest a word?
I said disheartening. He's disheartened.
Disheartened is a good word. Yeah, I think it's a good word, disheartened. Yeah. It fits the the point here. So he's saying there's two things now. One is it's coming mitzad hergesh ha'er. Like, let's say a person has been living in darkness or in a difficult situation a long time, and they've gotten used to it. But then suddenly they meet somebody and they see, wow, life could be a lot better than I ever could imagine. So that's going to create a certain disheartened, we'll use the word disheartened, a certain disheartenment that will come as a result of that. I've seen this many times. Again, I'll use some practical psychological examples because they just help understand this, because all this is really between us and Hashem. But let's say in a practical example, I can't tell you how many times this has happened. There are people who grew up, unfortunately, in homes where they did not have healthy role modeling of love. Either their parents were apart and had separated or divorced, or even if they were physically together, there was no emotional, healthy connections. So when you grow up in an environment like that as a child, an impressionable child, this becomes your standard. And you think that's what love is. I remember someone telling me, I always felt that love was when my father yelled at my mother. I thought that's part of expression of that's how you love someone. I know it sounds ridiculous, right? But he thought that's part of the process. There's times that, so yelling became for him a modus operandi, that at times when you really care about someone, sometimes you have to yell. And when he was enlightened and realized, talk about Meir, he saw that's not the case. Yes, you could be upset, and yes, you could have a disagreement, but there are ways to deal with a disagreement. So suddenly you see another perspective, another template, so to speak, another model, and you realize my model is not exactly a healthy one. And there are many examples, and some of them are even much more extreme. I remember this very vividly, someone coming to see me, and it was a woman. She grew up in a very, very traumatic household, a lot of abuse and so on. And we were talking. I'm not sitting, a few feet away from me. For some reason, I picked up a napkin, I think. I went to pick up something from the table, and she flinched, literally, flinched. Like I said, is everything all right? She said, I thought you were going to hit me. I said, why would I hit you? She said, because my life, the people who have been kind to me and loved me and were nice to me, ended up hurting me. So for her, it became a knee-jerk reaction that if somebody picks up their hand, and I realized, most of us would see that as something's wrong. It is something wrong. Not that something wrong with her. It's like when you're bitten by a dog, every time you'll see a dog, you're going to flinch until you learn to get over it. But it's a natural reaction. If God forbid somebody breaks an arm, even after it heals, you're more sensitive because that's how it is. You went through an experience. I'm just pointing out that there are situations that what wakes up the person to feeling that my life is miyush, this miyush word, the disheartening or the sense of something's wrong, is when they suddenly see, hey, this is not the way it is. So it's misad hergesh ha'er. Umargish teikef ha'ili b'zeh. And he feels the intense superiority, I guess, or advantage of that state. He suddenly realizes, well, life could be a lot better than I ever imagined. Again, for some of us who are not familiar with this, it sounds a little strange, but it's not if you think about it. This means al todnes chaveri al shatagil keme, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. I'm teaching that chapter now, chapter 30. That means don't judge someone until you're in their place. You never know. People have different situations in life. The fact that you may not react a certain way doesn't mean another person will react the same way. People have different reactions. Something may not bother you; it will bother someone else terribly. I'm just pointing out to make clear what he's saying. So he feels now take a fa'ili b'zeh in the alternative, in the oyer that suddenly was shining. So if you're living in darkness for many years and you get used to it, then until someone shines a light, you think this is normal. You may even think it's a little dark or maybe very dark, but you're used to it. You think everybody is living in the dark. But now he recognizes the take of fa'ili b'zeh. Va'idei zehu k'miyush. And that's what causes him, through that, he becomes disheartened. Because now he feels that I cannot arrive to this level. Now that I see the light, so to speak, no pun intended, that's what he's saying. you suddenly feel, I'm not there. Can I ever reach that place? Had you not seen it, it wouldn't have bothered you. But now that you have, so he becomes, that it's not possible for him to reach that place. It's not correct. It is possible. But that's the initial feeling that a person has. And that's why there's the distress that we're discussing, because you suddenly realize there's a whole new reality that is out there. So that's one way. V'kan einakan. V'kan einikain. Here's now a second way. The Rebbe Rashab is saying this is not what we're discussing here. In other words, what he said before, that the miyush benafshe is all coming because of the distress of the negative experience. He's saying here, so he says there's two ways to look at it, two things in that. It can come from hergesh er, but here we're not talking about from hergesh er. Here we're talking from the intense darkness. You'll see here. In what we're discussing here, he's not feeling the ilui of elikus. He's feeling the darkness. He's hitting rock bottom, basically. He's coming to the state of miyush, not because he's seen something better. It's because he realized how bad it is. So it's a different way of coming to that awareness. It's going the opposite direction. That's what he's been discussing till now. Is that he's feeling very strongly his chesuse usually would be inferiority, but I don't like that word. Chesuse means his lowliness, his low state, his dark state, his difficult state. At the head zeir seine Niederigkeit, he very much feels his lowliness is a literal translation of Niederigkeit. Chisus. It means you feel a lack of. And how he has no relationship, he has no connection to Elokus. He's wandered very far away. Knows he realizes how lost he is, but not because he has a mother model that's reminding him. V'zeu inyan hayush. And this is the yush, the resignation or the disheartenment that is happening in context of what we're discussing here. So the Beis Inyanim, the Rebbe Rashab is saying, is there's two ways to get to that, but here he's talking about the latter way. It's through the darkness, not through the light. That he's wondering, how is it possible that he will ever be close to godliness? Being that the way his situation is, according to the way he sees the situation, he has no connection to it at all. And this again you hear from people who come to this point and they say, too late for me. I'm damaged goods. I'm just using, again, psychological expressions. Too late for me. I've come to a place, I literally, again, so many examples that I deal with all the time, so it's really relevant, where the guy I met just recently, again, not more than once, he's in his mid-40s, he's single. He says, for me, it's too late. I'm never going to get married. Literally, years. He's given up. And not because he's seen light. It's because he's tried so hard, nothing's worked, in his mind at least, and he feels it's over, it's too late for me, that type of thing. So it's like coming to the other direction. It's coming from a resignation or of feeling that I'm not going to make it. Maybe it's not made for me, or maybe I'm something wrong with me, etc., etc. But it definitely creates a discomfort. Obviously, the goal here is not to remain in that state, but to do something about it, which of course was my job, is to tell him that's not correct. It may be more difficult. Look, Rabbi Akiva, who do you need greater than Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva, till age 40, had not learned any Torah. Some say he was a ger, he was a convert. Some say he was a child of converts. Even his name indicates Akiva from the word Akev. Akev is the heel of the foot, symbolizing element of concealment. But then he meets the daughter of Kalbus, the Gemara tells us, and they start dating, or however you want to call it. They start communicating. And she tells him, it's not true. You could start. He said, too late for me. I'm 40 years old. I'm not a child anymore. And remember, 40 then was a pretty old age. Life expectancy wasn't very high. But she convinces him and says, no, you have a neshama. I'm just paraphrasing. And there is hope for you. And then the famous story that he's walking and contemplating on it. Obviously, he was a brilliant man. And he sees a brook of water running. Famous story. And he's looking closely and he sees the water is running like a little waterfall. And one place he sees a stone that like something drilled a perfect hole through the stone. And he's wondering, how could such a perfect hole be through a stone? And he realizes that the drops of water keeps going through that hole. They were dripping and dripping and dripping for years to the point that they actually punctured, they actually penetrated the stone and made a hole. And he said to himself, if water, just drops of water consistently can make a hole in a stone, how much more so a human being, no matter how stone-hearted you may be or stone-minded you may be because your life, you didn't study Torah, but if you bring Torah into it, meaning water, ein mayim ela Torah, and you're consistent and persistent, you can do it. So then we know what happens next. He goes back to the woman, they do marry, and he tells her, she sends him off to study. He doesn't want to go, but she says he should go. And then he comes back after, 12 years? And he hears his wife speaking to someone, and they say, you let your husband leave for so many years? She says, if he was here now, I would tell him to go for another 12 years. I'm not sure if it's 12 years. I'm trying to remember how long it was. Anyone know the sort?
12 years, yes, huh? 12 years. 12
yeah.
years.
12 years. And she says, I would tell him to go for another 12 years. So he hears that, that's what he does. And he comes back 24 years later with 24,000 students, and he becomes Kula Aliba de Rabbi Akiva. That's what the Gemara says, that the whole Gemara, whole Talmud, follows the teachings of Rabbi Akiva. He didn't just become a scholar. He became one of the greatest, with the students that he had, are all the greatest sages, the Tanoim of the Mishnah. And that's when he says to all his students, when she comes to greet him, and they all wondering, who is she? He said, everything I have and everything you have is all due to her merit. Because she was the one that gave him that made sure that reminded him that's not true, don't give up. I'm just using it as an example. It's a perfect example of Yirush.
Moshe Rabbeinu told Hashem, why are you giving the Torah through me? He's so great, give the Torah through him.
Right. Ad kedei kach, exactly. That's how high level he was. So it's a good example. It's a very good example for what we're learning here. And you can understand why there would be Yirush. But that Yirush did not come from a Hergish Eir. It wasn't because he felt light and said, it's too, I can't reach that. It's coming from the opposite. He doesn't feel outside, doesn't feel there's hope for him. And he's in great pain from this. And this in turn, v'naseh, takef ha'amshacha b'yeser. And this is what causes the intense longing, precisely from the ultimate darkness, the ultimate distress and pain over this so-called desperate situation that he feels himself in, or disheartened situation. Next page, 38. I'm just going to continue to read more because I'd rather get the whole picture here, and then we'll stop for any questions. Next page, 38. But now he's going and saying that even this second stage, the longing, in other words, the first stage is the distress, the tsar. Now the longing, the emphasis here too is not on the light. The take of his gabras hatzar ma'yirush mitzad. The longing is also due to the impact of the pain that he's having, the intense pain of the yirush, the disheartening state due to the distance. This is the va'odzes, and that's why he doesn't feel the hamshach. He doesn't feel the longing, because even the longing is still under the effect of the distress. So 2 points he made here. One is that the distress is the main driving force and the longing is not revealed. But now even the longing is still under the effect of the running from, it's more running away from the fire, from the place of death, like he called it, to a place of life, rather than feeling the life and the light. That's what he's saying here. And now he's going to apply this to tshuva as well. But I'll stop here for any questions. And then it's not finished. The topic is still in the middle of, so we're not done with the whole topic. But he's going to come back to tshuva now. Let me just stop if anybody wants to ask anything about what we just learned. I think it's pretty clear, actually. But who knows? Maybe somebody has something. Okay, so let's continue. Ukamoy Cain, like what we just described, and I think he's trying to refer to the two efanim, because if you remember, in the top of previous page, he did say, Hain, that the shakeup at the core of the soul, tshuva, could be either due to the meitzar, the distress of the chatoim, and then it seems like he went back and saying, or it can come as a result of wanting to feel closer to godliness, not due to a sin. I think he's going back to these two different approaches. So he says, or maybe he's now entering into another approach to tshuva. We'll see in a minute where this is going. I'll read it, then I'll be able to clarify that. So too, there's a seder tshuva that comes in a different way. That's not coming through the distress, the straits, the direness, or the distress or the constraints, meitzar of chatoim, of sins. Because till now we're talking at length about how the sins cause a person to feel that distress. But rather it's coming from kiruv, a feeling of closeness to Ein Sof, or the closeness of Ein Sof, I should say. Kiruv hamoyer, like he said earlier with Aseret Yemei Tshuva. Aseret Yemei Tshuva, on one hand, yes, will awaken someone who's been, and God forbid, has transgressed. It may inspire them to sense how dark it is, but it also has another effect on, let's say, tzaddikim, or people who are not dealing with sins, that there's the kiruv hamoyer. The moyer is the source of the soul, of the spark, is getting closer to the spark, and it's the kiruv hamoyer that is, like he said before, through hergish ha'ir, that the ha'ir is causing the person to want to long. I don't know if this is the same level that he called before the ha'ir, because there it was darkness that's sensing light. Here he's just saying sensing the light. So I'm not sure if I would equate the two. We'll see in a minute. Let's see where this goes again. So he says, "Akiruv dein zochins kiruv amar nase seides b'neshama b'am shachosel elakus." So here the situation is such. It's suddenly its situation is that a person is suddenly entering, let's say, the palace of the king, or where godliness is more revealed to him, and that's what's causing the longing. That's what's causing the tshuva, not the distress from darkness, but an exposure to the light. Nasi seides b'neshama b'amshachos alakus. Ve'ein zeh mitzad shemargish erein sof u'mishum zehu nimshach. And he's not qualifying. So you would think this could be okay. He's feeling erein sof. The Rebbe Rashab says no. It's not coming because he feels erein sof, the divine infinite light. U'mishum zehu nimshach. And that's why he's drawn to it. Shezehu b'chinas hamshacha v'arotzeh d'reusa d'liba. Because that is the hamshacha, being the envirotze and the yearning and longing of reusa deliba, which is desire of the heart. The b'cholos wadayin aveda shal piatam. That's not tshuva. That is generally the aveda al piatam, like we talked. I don't want to use the word conventional, but it is conventional. The routine aveda. Let's say where a person is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, contemplating on godliness, divine unity, and it awakens v'haftas Hashem Elokecha. That's Usta Deliba, and that is, he's contemplating on godliness, and the godliness awakens his heart, V'haftas Hashem Elokecha, and he loves. That's not what we're discussing here. That's not tshuva. That's the way it should be in every day, a regular routine day. That's the avodah of a person. Avodah shal pitam shemargish eid ein sof. He senses eid ein sof umashum zeh hu nimshach, and as a result of that, he's drawn to it. V'ahavta, to love it. Aval kan ein margish b'chinas gili de eid ein sof. Here we're talking a situation he's not feeling the gili of eid ein sof. So then what is he adding now? That we talked about that earlier. So clearly there's another level here where you don't feel the gili of eid ein sof, but it's not coming because of chato meitzad. It's coming. So he's going to say, "V'hu hiseider shenasa b'neshama l'mayla metam v'das." And yet we're still not talking about something coming from sins and darkness and distress. It's the hiseider in the neshama that's higher than suprarational, higher than tam v'das. Tam v'das is you contemplate on God, and we've learned this at length. Mamala kalalman, seviv kalalman, and that in turn, like the Rambam says. How does a person come la'avasei? How does a person come to love and revere God? By contemplating ungodliness. You realize, let's say on a very basic level, God has blessed you with life, with health, with a family, with success. All these reasons is a good reason to want to connect. Not just show gratitude, but you start loving the real energy within you, chayenu, that what is your true source of life is godliness. That's not a tshuva experience. That is a regular. That should be that should be, as I said, a routine daily experience when we daven, or in general when we serve Hashem. But that's not a veda ma'ila metam v'das. That's not a that's not a isedus that's higher than the rational. That's a rational process that you contemplate and you understand. Someone has been good to you, and you want more of that. You want to connect to him. Here he's not feeling the gili of Eid Ein Sof. So then why is he feeling it? So he says because there's a type of moment of grace, so to speak. That's because the moed is like reaching out. It's like a time of the year where there's more gili alakus. Not because you came to it through contemplation, but it's like a moment of Eis Ratzon, the Seresimei Tshuva, where we're told that a Lakus is more like the Pasuk says, Dirshu Hashem b'imotzei karu b'yesei karuv. That's the source of the concept. Call to God when He's close, and Dirshu Hashem b'imotzei karu and Dirshu besiege God when He's close, when He's be found. Karu b'yesei karuv, and call out to Him when He's close. So of course, obviously, what do you mean? God is always to be found. He's always there. God is always present. And He's always close to you. However, there are times when it's more revealed. The rest of the year, there are more filters and more layers, more tzimtzumim that conceal it. But in the 10 days of tshuva, it's easier to access. So what's happening? That there's like some gates are being opened for us. Like Shabbos. Shabbos mekatsha v'kaima. Shabbos comes, it's not due to our avodah that Shabbos comes. Yom Tov is defined, the Bezdin determines when is Yom Tov. But Shabbos, every seventh day, Mekatsha v'kaima, God established the seventh day, Yom HaShvi, Shabbos LaHashem. Yom Shabbos Kedesh.
Is so this a lower longing than the other one?
One second. I have to finish the idea. 1 second. So here, it's coming, the Seresimei Tshuva is kiruv hamoed ala nitzutz. So b'meila, that's why, that's awakening the person to tshuva. The Arizal says, for example, this may be relevant here. He says that during the Seresimei Tshuva, kol neshama she'ena boiche, any soul that doesn't cry in the Seresimei Tshuva, ein nishmasei shlema. His soul is not complete. Why? Because the neshama in Seresimei Tshuva has should be naturally. It's like the flame has gotten closer to you, and the nature of flames is that when a moyer, the source of the flame, gets closer to the spark of the flame, the spark will be drawn into the flame. So this is a gili that's coming. This is coming from gili, not because you feel the gili, but because it's the mitzias is that the gili is there more in a more apparent way.
You feel it.
He said clearly, "Eina margish b'chinas gili de'er ein sof." Not because it's not the feeling; it's because it's there. and that is affecting the person. It's just like, that's what he's saying. We say this, shenas b'neshama l'mayla, tam v'dam etzad kiruv hamoyer lanitzos. Okay. And I'll read one more, the parentheses, then I'll stop here. Well, be'emes, now he's so bottom line, let's just say what he's added here. He's added now what he began, that you can come to tshuva due to the distress, because the chatoim are so bothering you that you feel desperate, you feel you need to get out of this dark place, this place of death, like a dangerous place, and that's what's driving you. And there, what's dominant is the running away from the danger, from the lack of healthy situation. That's what the feeling is. And even the fact that it's the hamshach is there, being drawn and longing to get to a healthy place, is also the dominant element is not the healthy place, but getting out of the unhealthy place, as he explained. But then there's another way. And why does it happen? Especially in Aseret Simei Tshuva, the kiruv v'moyer lanutzos, he used that as well earlier, could also be the cause that leads to that, as he said that earlier. That's why he senses how distant he is. Okay, but now he's talking not mitzad distance, not mitzad distress. The mere fact that there's more Gilead Lukus by kiruv hamoyer lanitzos affects the person. And that's the reason that he's feeling a longing. Like he says clearly, not mitzad meitzer achatoyim, mitzad kiruv de'eid ein sof, but not that he's feeling eid ein sof, like in Aved al pitam v'das, where you contemplate and that awakens emotions, but rather it's because there's a gili like kiruv hamoyer lanitzos, the words he used, shemargish eid ein sof, u'mishum zehu nimshach, kein eina margish, mitzad kiruv hamoyer lanitzos, v'neshamas l'mayla metam v'das. It's just purely like God is revealing himself more, even if you're not on that level. It's like Yom Kippur. It's Sumash Yom Mechaper. It doesn't say Yom Kippur you have to prepare for that. Obviously, if you prepare, it's better. But the Yom Kippur itself has a power, especially in the end of Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah. The doors are open. God is opening up and affecting the Yechidah Shebenefesh. So the Yechidah of every person is suddenly senses a longing, not mitzad Aveda, but rather because there's a revelation from, so to speak, from above. But now he adds one more thing, that even this level, where we're not talking about sins, if you compare it to the highest levels of Elikus, the truth is everything is a sin. The truth is, even tzaddikim, even those that are not dealing with the distress of a transgression, when you're talking about comparing to the amitis reimus atzmos, to the true exaltedness and magnitude or majesty of atzmos, hakol kichatoim upoishim legabe. Everybody is like considered to be like sinners and transgressors compared to him. Like it says elsewhere. That's why in the 10 days of Tshuva, everyone says Hashem Rebagadnu. Not just sinners, not just people who need to sin, who have sinned. Because when you're talking about comparing it to the levels of Elikus and the highest levels, anything, even a lower level that may be completely light, but compared to Atzmus, everything is considered inadequate. And that's where we find the Chassidus, the concept that Chet, Meloshen Chasodin. If you say a sin by a tzaddik, you say, how can we know tzaddikim don't sin? So chesed means not a sin, but inadequate. They could have done better. They're missing something. So in that sense, everybody's compared to, it could be called a chayta. Obviously, you can't compare an actual sin to this lack of, like you say, Moshe Rabbeinu reached 49 gates of knowledge, of bina, of understanding. But the Shad Hanun, he couldn't reach. That's a lack. That's a chesed. But it's, and he's called chayla. Chayla is Gematria Mem Test 49. But you can't compare him to a person, God forbid, a sick person who's lacking because of an actual sin. It's just he didn't reach shleimus. It's like saying, as long as Mashiach doesn't come, you don't have real shleimus. So relatively speaking, it's considered like a chet. So he's just adding that to qualify that even though we're not talking about actual sins, everything compared to this highest level has that element. Now I'm going to stop here. As I said, I have to leave earlier. I'll take a few questions, and then I will conclude earlier than usual because of, as I said, I have something I must do. But I'll stop here. Any questions?
Is this a deepest longing if it comes through Chatoim than the kiruv moil?
Mustama, yeah, because that's why you say that a real Baal Tshuva that comes from real darkness is G-dliness Nasali Kazochi, is like we spoke from Tanya. His longing will probably be deeper than a tzaddik's longing mitzad kiruv amoyed. That's what I would say. That's why you need Mashiach. Also, lasovet tzaddikai b'tiyuf. The Mashiach, we learned in Ayin Bey's, the explanation will add the power, that power of tshuva of this. In other words, from the stress, it creates more intensity than when you don't have distress. But can a tzaddik experience distress over the fact that he's not reaching atzmus? You'd have to say probably to some extent. But if you asked me to weigh the two, the distress of someone running from fire probably is stronger. It's a good question. But I think the fact that Mashiach has to teach it to tzaddikim, or Mashiach will help tzaddikim reach that, tells you that there's something they don't have because they didn't really have true distress. Meaning, extent like a person who's done a sin.
I want to verify how much are they supposed to be.
Are you talking to me? Okay. Are there any other questions? Because if not, I will conclude now. And if there are, if you don't mind, I'll take them tomorrow.
You said he's not feeling, but
Okay.
there is some
As I
kind
said,
of
I have to run right now. So I'm going to stop this recording. We are on page, let me just say where we are up to. We're on page 38, middle of 30, a little close to the middle of 38. And